All right, guys. So this is a review for your final for Unit 1. So just so you guys know, I went through the final from last semester. I identified which problems were on there. I also just kind of looked through the chapter and just looked at the problems I felt like were the most important. So this is just kind of my guess as to what is critical. I definitely think you, besides watching this video, you should spend even maybe just 30 minutes looking through Unit 1, then 30 through 2, etc. Until the end. Okay, so one big thing in Unit 1 is determining the domain of something. Okay, this has been a struggle for many people, and basically what you do is you look for one of these 4 restrictions in your equation, and if none of those are there, then the domain is everything, and if it is there, then you deal with it accordingly. So for example, on A, if you have a square root that is on the top of a fraction, okay, what you do is you say the inside must be greater than or equal to 0. Okay, let me give you an example. Y equals the square root of 2x minus 1. We have a square root. You can't have a negative inside of there. So 2x minus 1 must be greater than or equal to 0. So 2x must be greater than or equal to 1. So x must be greater than or equal to 1/2. That's it. Okay. Another thing is if you have a square root on the bottom, it's still the inside greater than 0, but now it can't be equal to 0 because then you have a 0 on the bottom. So let's say you had y equals 6x over the square root of 3x plus 2. Okay, so you have a square root that's on the bottom. So normally for a square root, we'd say greater than equal to, but since it's on the bottom, you just drop the equal sign. That's all you do. So then it's 3x is greater than negative 2, so that's x is greater than negative 2/3, and that's it. Okay, if you have a fraction with an x on the bottom, okay, for example, y equals 7x plus 2 over 3x plus 1. Okay, well, you guys know you can't have an x on the bottom, or pardon me, can't have a 0 on the bottom. So you just say the bottom cannot be 0. So you just take that 3x plus 1, state that it can't be 0. 3x cannot be negative 1, so x cannot be negative 1/3. That's it. I think you guys are pretty good at that one. The other restriction on domain is if we're dealing with logs. Okay, so right here, let's write down logs. So if you have a log, what you're taking the log of, okay, must be greater than 0. Okay, so for example, y equals log base 4 of 3x minus 5. Okay. Okay, so all you have to do, 3x minus 5 is greater than 0, 3x is greater than 5, x is greater than 5/3. That's it. Okay, so mathematically, you guys are obviously capable of solving all those either equations or inequalities. So this is just completely, absolutely a memorization thing. Okay, or you can think about it. I know that if my square root's on the bottom, it can't be equal to, and it can't be negative. That means greater than, etc., etc. So the reason people miss this is because they don't have it memorized, basically. Okay. Okay, here's the second one. Y equals 2x to the second minus 8x plus 1. They're going to say, what is the minimum value? I'm busy. You're interrupting me. It's my friend. Go away. Oh boy. Okay, minimum value and minimum point. Okay, you have to know the difference. So this is a parabola that opens up, and the vertex, which is HK, is a minimum. Okay, so if they're asking you minimum value, then they want the y value of that vertex. If they want the point, they're asking you for the minimum point, or even just the minimum, then you're looking for the h and the k. Okay, so you go negative b over 2 times a. That's negative 8 over 2 times 2. That's 8 over 4, which is a 2. So you know the minimum point is 2 comma something. So now you just plug it back in like this. And that is going to be, oops, a negative 7. Okay, so if they asked you for the minimum value, it would be y equals negative 7. If they ask you for the minimum or the minimum point, it would be right here. So if they say minimum and they don't say point or value, personally, what I would do, I would be really safe and I'd say my minimum value is y equals negative 7 and my minimum point is 2 negative 7, and then I would box both of those and I would just make sure I write them down. I think that'd be pretty safe. Okay, here's the third example. Y equals x to the second plus 1 and 2/3 x minus 4, and then they give you places that is true. So x is less than 0, x is greater than or equal to 0. And instead of y, they usually put f of x or g of x. It doesn't matter though. It's no more difficult. Okay, they could ask you some points. For example, what is f of negative 1? So which equation would you use? Well, look at the x value. Negative 1 is the x. That's less than 1. So you'd put your negative 1 in parentheses squared plus 1, and that gives you a 2. Okay. They could also ask you something like, what is f of 3? Well, that's greater than 0, so it's equation 2. So it's 2/3 times 3 minus 4. If you just grab your calculator, guys, I know that scares some of you guys. If you just go 2 divided by 3, parenthesis 3, close it, minus 4, hit enter, put the whole thing in the calculator, got a negative 2. Okay. They could also ask you to graph this. Okay. So x squared plus 1 is a parabola shifted up 1 with a normal stretch. Okay. So up 1, make a dot. And then up 1, right 1, left 1, up 1, 2, 4 on each side, and there's your graph. Okay, but the whole thing's not supposed to be there, only x values that are less than 0. Okay, well, here's your 0 right here, less than is to the left, so I get rid of the right. Okay, and then I have to look at that equation, and there is no equal sign, so I have to go right here and very clearly make that circle an open circle. Okay, and now I'm going to graph the line. So I'm going to go down 4 and make a dot, and then from there my slope is 2/3. So I'm going to go up 2 and right 3, up 2 and right 3, and then I'm going to draw that line. But that line is only supposed to be there for x values that are bigger than 0. Bigger than 0 mean to the right of the 0. So the stuff on the left goes away. If I can get my eraser to work. There we go. Okay, so anyway, that stuff over there is gone. And I do have an equal sign with that. So since I have an equal sign, that circle right there is going to be closed. And it looks like that. Okay. All right, that was number 3. Here's number 4. Okay, absolute value, oops, absolute value inequality. So guys, if you ever have an inequality in your problem, ever, the first thing is always to get it alone, okay? So I have 4 minus absolute value of 2x, or 4 minus 2x, absolute value of that is greater than or equal to 6. Then once it's alone, remember you make this an equal sign. I'm not going to sit and try to erase that. You make it an equal sign. And then once it's an equal sign, you split it in two. So that would be 4 minus 2x equals 6, or 4 minus 2x equals negative 6. Then solve those. So that's negative 2x equals 2, divide x equals negative 1. Right here, negative 2x equals negative 10, divide x equals 5. Okay, then you go to your number line. Negative 1 is here, positive 5 is there. I have an equal sign, so those are going to be closed. And then remember, if it's an absolute value, to figure out which word is shade or whatever, you look right there. Greater than means outside. So you just have to remember that, okay? So that would be here and here. If that's a less than or less than equal to, then it's inside. So your answer is negative infinity. Sorry, I'm trying to get it to write as a pen, and it takes a minute to transition. Okay, so I'll write it as a highlighter. So negative infinity to negative 1 with a bracket, union 5 with a bracket, to infinity with a parenthesis, and that's it. Okay, sorry about the highlighter. Okay, that was number 4. Here's number 5, and I'm still highlighting. This is just great. Yay. Okay, here's 5. Okay, so you have this graph, okay? And we're going to say we have a regular parabola. It opens up. Looks like that. And we're going to call that guy right there f of x. Okay? And now we're going to graph something else. This would be given to you. Okay? So say like this. A line, and we'll call that guy g of x. Okay? So what if they ask you to do this? F plus g of 2. So what that means is find out what f of, actually we're going to go f of g of 0. Let's do 0. What that means is find f of g 0 and add g of 0. So the 0 is an x value. So right here on the red graph, which is f of x, if x is 0, y is 0. So f of 0 is a 0. On this purple graph, if x is a 0, your y is a negative 2. So that's plus a negative 2, which is just the same thing as minus 2. Sorry. So it's 0 minus 2, answer is a negative 2. Okay? Okay, here's question number 6, and this is actually our last one. So they're going to give you a table. In there you have an x, you have an f of x, and you have a g of x. And then they give you all these values. You can write this down, or you can just look. Just make sure you know how to do it. Okay, so if they ask you to find f plus g of negative 1, they're asking you to find f of negative 1 plus g of negative 1. Well, here's where I'm looking right here, because that's where x is a negative 1. So if x is a negative 1, f of x is 9. And if x is a negative 1, g of x is a negative 8. So this is 9 minus 8, which gives me 1, and that's it. Okay? That's all I'm doing for Unit 1. Nice and short, 15 minutes. There'll be videos for Units 2, 3, and 4 as well.